all I know. But another thing is, I don't believe that Diddy taught her oral. She was dating Ryan Leslie, a whole grown man, almost 10 years her senior, and she didn't know anything about that. Yeah, I don't believe
Well, we
that.
don't know
At the
how
end of the
long she
day,
was dating him either.
but she was dating him for 3 years. She said that on the stand.
Okay.
But the
Mhm.
bottom line is this: she definitely said it was 3 years because
Well,
Nicole Westmoreland
I
brought it
still
up.
say it's grooming. I
But well,
still
you could
say it's
say that,
grooming.
and it may have been, but I disagree.
Well,
And the bottom line is, I don't believe her when she said she didn't know how to do oral. Okay, that's what I don't believe. At the end of the day, but go ahead.
Not
I got
very
time
many
today.
females do know how to do that. Back in the day, that wasn't something we all were
Back
doing,
in the
and I
day,
think
that
we
was in the
all
two
know that.
thousands.
But
That was in,
and for her, she was young, so she may not have been. But either way, I disagree. I do feel like if they had gone at the RICO differently, that they
mm-hmm.
could have gotten him. If they would have gone after dealing in obscene matters, which is what I thought they were going to do, because they were talking about all of this freak off, freak off, freak off, freak
Right.
off, showing these videos to the jurors and all of that. So if you were going to go for dealing in obscene matters, you would have gotten him for that. The thing with the firearms, there were firearms there with serial numbers scratched off. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if you have a license or not. That's still illegal.
Mhm.
They could have possibly tried for that. They could have also tried for blackmail with Cassie's mom because they had the wiretap. But at the end of the day, I
Well,
feel
that
like
was also extortion, is what they said.
yeah, but they
Mhm.
could have gone for that, and instead of witness tampering, they could have done obstruction with justice. There's a lot of things that they could have done with this case that the prosecution did not. They fudged up the case. They fouled it up from the
Mhm.
beginning. Not only
Well,
that, I've
yeah,
said
but
at
the
the
their
judge.
beginning,
witnesses, their
I
witnesses though, their witnesses didn't help them out either, which was
can I
another
finish
thing.
my
exactly.
point
Yeah,
though? Because I mean, I let everybody cook.
yeah.
Can I?
Finish.
Yeah,
Go
Thank
go
ahead.
you.
ahead.
The judge messed up by not sequestering the jury because I don't care. By human nature, we're all curious. I know they were watching that CNN, that alternate witness. When he got up there and he was talking, he kept saying, we thought, we said, we felt. Who is this we? Because y'all were not supposed to even be talking to about the case with each other. That was the judge's instructions to them when they got up and left every day. So they were definitely talking about it. I'm not faulting them because guess what? If we were on the jury, we would be sneaking and looking and talking to people too if we weren't sequestered by the judge as well. I do feel like they reached very far with the distribution. I don't feel like they should have even gone for that charge. But what I do also feel, and this has been my stance from the beginning, I feel like Diddy was innocent of this RICO that they charged him with, but he's still guilty of crimes. And he
Yeah,
still needs
absolutely.
some type of help because this man was 20 years, who knows how long before the 20 years that we've heard about in court. He was on very hard substances all the way up until they arrested him. So at the end of the day, I feel like there are other aspects to this. And I think when people hear people saying he's innocent, he's free, he's this, he's that, that's the part that kind of gets lost in the translation where people are looking like, well, how can you say that he's innocent after everything that we've saw, especially those of us that were in the courtroom after we have that video embedded in our brain. That's how much we've watched it. We can all literally sit here with our eyes open and tell you frame for frame what that intercontinental video was. We
Yeah.
watched, saw photographs and all of that stuff. Now, when it comes down to Cassie, I'm going to say this. I feel like Cassie had a stronger case. She did. I don't feel the same way when it comes down to Jane. I don't. I have a hard time with Jane because we know who Jane is. We know who Jane has been with. We know that Jane is an industry girl. We know that Jane was a little older, not to say that older women can't be bamboozled and hoodwinked because we certainly can at any age. Anybody can.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like she was groomed into the industry a long time ago and she knew what it was when she got with Diddy. She just didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how deep it was going to go. And she, like she said, opened that Pandora's box and ended up tumbling down Alice's rabbit hole and couldn't get out. And with these, both of these girls, I say their responsibility, their accountability. The biggest one for me is you let this man have power over your finances, power
Mm-hmm.
over your life, over your
Mm-hmm.
home, your career. The career part, Cassie probably could not help, but you gave too much power. And then when you tried to take it back, it was too late. Once you show somebody how to treat you, that is how they treat you. To me, that does not make them any less of a victim. I wasn't there. I don't know what they went through personally. I know what they told us on the stand. I do know that mental coercion, mental abuse is real, mental manipulation is real. And to say
Mm-hmm.
that neither one of them went through any of that, for me, I can't say that. But what I can say is this was not the case that the government showed us. Even going back to opening statements, those predicate charges that they went after were not the charges they should have gone after. And no, I'm not a law student, But I very much did look up this and study this. So I kind of had an understanding of what it was that I was looking at. So, do I feel like the government really wanted Diddy? No, they didn't want him, because if they wanted him, they could have got him, and they could have gone back 30 years. Let's be real. We have a lot of information that's been out here for years. If they were going to go back 20, why not go back 30? You got the proof, right? All you got to do, the burden of proof was on them, but
Well, it
they didn't
really
prove
didn't
it. So,
matter. It really didn't matter how far they went back if they were going to do the case the way they did it, because they still didn't prove their point. With that all being said, I will say this: whether or not Cassie was groomed is a matter of opinion, as far as I'm concerned. But
mhm,
what I will say is, both of the women who are victims of domestic violence and maybe some other things, at the end of the day, they both allowed themselves to be in those predicaments. They put themselves in there due to their own bad decisions, and it
Mhm.
was all about the money for the most part, the lifestyle, and being with A-list celebrities, because Cassie even said, according to Capricorn Clark, I believe it was her who said and testified to, that when she told Cassie to leave Diddy, Cassie said, well, who am I going to date if I leave him? Jay-Z's already taken. So that shows right there that she wanted someone of money, status, and power. And that's likely why she stayed when she shouldn't have. She should have left, specifically if she never left before, after that beating at the Intercontinental Hotel. But Henny, to your point, when you say that he absolutely is guilty of some things, because we all saw the video, yes, we all did see the video, but unfortunately, they didn't charge him with that. And that's the point that everybody keeps bringing up.
They
Okay,
can't charge him with that.
people that say that, oh, he's guilty, well, he's not guilty of what they charged him with, and
Right.
they did not charge him with the beating. And what the state did and what the government did, in my opinion, is they spent too much of their time showing us that video over and over and over. And for the
Mhm.
loyal royals who've been following me before the trial even started, I believe that I told you all, and you all can vouch for me if I did. I told you all that they should not play that video too much. Okay, and I told you all of an example where that had been done in a previous trial. Okay, at the end of the day, that becomes oversaturated and then it loses its shock value. And that's likely what happened with the jurors when they saw it. But you see, the reason they showed it over and over is because the prosecution was hoping to have Diddy convicted based on that video alone. Everybody sees that he is a monster who beats women. They'll say, well, lock him up and throw away the key just for that. Doesn't matter if he did the other stuff. But unfortunately, this jury, by the judge's instructions and by their own common sense and by the letter of the law to a T. So that's what they did. And if the prosecution didn't present their case well enough, then that's on them. And I think they absolutely did want Diddy, because that's why
Right.
supposedly they're supposed to be trying to get him indicted on some other stuff in California. Now, I can't confirm that, but I saw a couple of videos where people were saying that. It came from Little Rod, who did an interview with academics, I do believe. So that remains to be seen. But I think they absolutely did want him, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have been fighting to keep him locked up without bail. That's
Right.
just my opinion. But did you have something to say, Joy? And then I'll take it back to Gavin.
Yeah, I was kind of, taking it in kind of like Henny was, maybe she, was groomed. But as time went along, as the trial went on, I started hearing the different, Cassie's testimony, Mia's, all of their testimonies. And it was almost like they were all running for the same thing. It's like they all wanted money. I mean, Mia, it seemed like Cassie, Jane Doe. I mean, really and truly all of them, like they were all running, and it was like they were trying to uh, I guess run a never ending race, I guess, per se. But when I looked at it and seeing that Cassie was dating the Ryan Leslie, at the age that she was, and then when she kind of jumped over the Diddy, and then they were showing her when she was with Kid Cudi, and then with with this person, that person, now even to her husband. So that kind of like, for me, it kind of let me know what kind of woman she was. To me, it
Exactly.
led me to
Right.
believe that she wasn't as innocent as everybody is kind of portraying her as a victim. Now, she was a victim to up to a certain extent. To me, personally, I believe she was a victim up to a certain extent. But also, when she left once or twice, I believe it's like, when you left once, if it was so bad, why did you go back up second or third, however many times she went back? So with all that being said, after the testimonies, and I felt like a lot of the witnesses, a lot of them were lying. I mean, blatantly lying. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
what's her name? Bungalow. What's her name?
She
Brianna.
was
Rihanna
definitely
Bungalow.
lying. She
Yeah.
was definitely lying.
Yes. And what's his name, Charlucci, Diddy's friend. I seen a video clip of him saying, he was pretty much saying the same thing. He was like, "Why don't you take a bucket? I think like a 5 gallon bucket and go hold it over a balcony of a hotel, like even on the second or third floor, whatever. Your arms are not going to withstand that much of that much weight." So when I heard her say 17th story and she's being held over the balcony, I mean I can barely probably hold my cell phone over a balcony for that long, and my hands are already getting tired. Let alone a whole person that I don't know how much she weighs,
She
but
weighed 115 pounds. She was 5'1". Diddy is 6'1", and his arms were supposedly outstretched in the way that
yeah,
she described it. And
yeah,
he had his hands like this, gripping her breast. So I'm telling you, from studying physics, okay, and just
mhm,
knowing about gravity in general, there's
mhm,
no way that you could hold someone for the length of time that he supposedly held her, with her feet touching the balcony and then holding her up with his arms outstretched, hands open, not a grasp, not a
mhm,
grasp like that. And then she
mhm,
said she was pushing back against him. How did she not fall? Also, let's not forget that in Cassie's lawsuit, Cassie said the incident happened at the hotel.
mhm,
Bongalon said that it happened at Cassie's apartment.
yeah.
Okay, that's why she was
Right.
destroyed upon cross examination by the very talented and awesome Nicole Westmoreland.
Right.
Mhm,
But there was also a text message from Cassie on the 30th that corroborated that she was. And if you look at that balcony, it is possible that she wasn't completely over the balcony, but he had her on that rail. And that's how she was able to push back.
Yeah, she said
Um,
her feet were on
I
the rail.
do
She did say that.
Right, her feet were over the rail. So she was probably not all the way over the rail. But I also do agree, by law, and I guess you can corroborate this, lapse of memory does not equal perjury on the stand.
But
What
she
I
gave
do
a.
believe happened, what I
Go ahead.
do believe happened, just my thoughts, because again, around that time, Brianna brought into play all of the substances that were in play at this particular point in time between her, Cassie, and Diddy. None of them knew exactly when it happened, but something happened. And the reason why I say something happens is because that text message on September 30th was all the way in 2016. There's no way they plotted this to bring it to fruition in 2023. Nobody is that going to do all of that. But something did happen. Whether they all remember, probably not, but they just know something happened at that point in time. And Diddy also allegedly had Rod Holiday call her and offer her $1 million to settle her claim against him, is her demand against him that Tyrone Blackburn put out there, that Brianna under testimony said Tyrone fabricated a lot of stories,
mhm.
but Diddy was trying to settle it. And we've also heard that Diddy held Wale over a balcony as well. So it's
Yeah,
not like
you're right.
we
We
heard
heard
these
that.
We
things
heard that, but it's
before.
been
And we
proven.
didn't hear that from Wale.
And
We heard
Wale denied
his
it.
ears.
It's
So,
gospel.
but at the end of the day, there is evidence that shows something happened with the balcony and Brianna. So I'm not
Okay.
going to sit here and overlook it.
Yes, but here's the thing. When it went on cross examination and they gave the dates, she got caught up. She gave a
Right.
date of June 25th, 4th of 25th, I'm not mistaken. Diddy
26.
is, Diddy is in New York at the
Uh-huh.
time. There's evidence of that. So when
Right.
you give those dates and they see that, that's why the jurors, that raises reasonable doubt. We could sit here
Right.
and
That's
grasp,
all it
well, I think
needs.
he did this, I think he did that. Bottom line is, when it went to court and when you go to court and you prove something, you if the jury is hearing this and they're seeing contradictory information, not to mention also it came out, I believe her and Cassie were even comparing notes with each other with the lawsuits. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another problem. So you see, there's a monetary gain also, I believe, if you filing a lawsuit against someone as to their credibility, which they can attack. And I would just want to push back a little bit and disagree with you. I believe the feds were trying to go very hard on him because feds do not like to waste resources if they think they have a strong case. They actually, like I stated before, I thought this was an overreach with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the charges that they had. And in particular, when you're talking about they had to drop some of the predicates before they went into closing arguments because they knew it was going to confuse the jury. They tried to aggravate the arson charge. The thing was, Kid Cudi couldn't confirm whether or not, even though he said he believed Diddy was behind it. Did you actually witness it? Well, no, I didn't witness it. Did anybody else see this? No. Was it on camera? No. So no, there was no way of proving it. Plus, the DNA evidence said there was a female fingerprints that were
Uh-huh.
on. Not to mention also, as far as the extortion aspect, they did try to go with that. In fact, Cassie's mother had testified to that. But what happened? Well, yeah, he had forwarded money to. He asked me to pay. I believe it was. I can't remember the exact amount. Was it
$20,000.
$20,000? But then he wired the money back within just within that same time frame. So there's another issue with that. And plus, my understanding is with these record labels and what that was about too is he had advanced her monies, I believe, to complete music work, if I'm not mistaken. Now let's go back. Now here's another thing. When you say he commits crimes, we know he's committed crimes. He hasn't been convicted of any of these things. So technically speaking, no crime other than what he has just recently been convicted on is official. Now, yes, what we saw on that video, Queen, that was domestic violence. There's no doubt
Hmm.
about it. And regardless of the reason of it, I wouldn't have, your reason it was bad. Supposedly, from what, and I believe his attorneys had brought up on cross examination, if you look carefully when Diddy was running down the hall with the towel, you notice nothing is in his hand, but he's holding his towel. And then after he assaults Cassie, he's grabbing some object and walking off. Supposedly, what it was is that she took his phone from him.
That's
Now,
not true. She testified that was her phone. Those were her bags. That was not his phone. And when you watch the video later on, he has a
wait,
whole
you're
different
interrupting
phone.
me while I'm now. You're interrupting me while I'm talking, ma'am. You can respond back when I'm finished. All right. So if you say she testified that that wasn't true, but here's the thing: the jurors did not believe her credibility. Ultimately, at the end of the day, on the trafficking in the RICO. Now, I said supposedly because the defense attorneys, I believe, were bringing that up on cross examination, which is their right to do so. And I see some people commenting about it. But whatever the reason was, why he did it or not, even if it were true, I wouldn't have handled it that way, is the point that I was making. So
Right.
I will probably, he could have. But then again, when she was asked by the police off the security if you wanted to press charges, and this came up in trial, she chose to decline not to press charges from that incident. So the bottom line is this: it's 2016. It's outside the statute of limitations. Anything else we're trying to do, saying, "Well, I think he did this in '99. If I think he did this in 2005 or 2010 or 2011," is prescribed. So we can't go back because we think he's a good guy and did these things. If there's a statute of
You mean a
limitations,
bad
the
guy?
final the reason why we have to do that, the reason why we have statute of limitations, we got to remember what's on trial here. It wasn't just about Diddy. What we're talking
That's
about
right. It's bigger than Diddy.
is the Constitution of the United States, your constitutional rights being at stake, because the government can actually is trying to regulate what happens between adult private individuals, adults. And think about this: if you are a man who is dating another one, you and your girl are dating, if you fly her out, just on your girlfriend out on vacation to go to Miami. I live in New Orleans. If I want to take me and my girl, we go to Miami and we do our thing. Technically speaking, I've broken the law by doing the Mann Act.
Right.
Yeah,
That
if
was
I'm
my
paying
point.
for all this,
Mhm.
you're flying for all this. The reason why Diddy got convicted, he was the interstate commerce and so forth that was involved, and the and bringing the people out. But the bottom line is this: if he had done this now, if he did this in Nevada, he would have been good. Probably he wouldn't
Mhm.
have been convicted of that. But the fact that we have a government that's regulating our private life, we have to be cautious of that, and we have to look carefully at what's going on. And
Exactly. Because
we got to
next time
keep
it could be somebody in
emotions.
your
And I
family.
understand this is a serious thing. This is what I'll close out. A lot of people are upset and serious about it and take it, have emotions on it. You also got to take the emotions out of these discussions, because at the end of the day, we all got to go and work and pay our bills. Diddy and Cassie ain't gonna pay it for us.
That's
So
true. Facts
Mhm.
over feelings all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. And that's
I'm
why I had to change my stance, because one thing that I said in the beginning was I was very biased because I just don't like Diddy. And I've never liked Diddy. And
Mhm.
that's why I was biased. But I had to check myself and say, wait a minute now, you went to school for criminal justice. You know how the law is supposed to be applied. And I thought about my capstone review where I talked about capital punishment and how it's used to target minorities, people who look like me, as well as poor people. Okay, so with that all being said, if I was going against the system for that and saying how it's disparaged, some people have disparities in the system, then I had to give the same allowance for Diddy, whether I like him or not. I had to take my emotions out of it because, like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, you have to rise above your emotions. Okay, that's what you have to do because emotions cloud your thinking, and you do not think logically when you're so wrapped up in your emotions and your feelings. And that's just the facts. With that being said, Measure Man said exactly. I'm not a Diddy fan, but I feel like the rights you strip today will be the freedom you need tomorrow. So be objective and fair, tread lightly. You're absolutely right. And that was eloquently said, beloved. And thank you for that. And also thank you for your contribution to the channel. Peace, love, and blessings, honey. Y'all know the queen has to pay the bills. Because like Gavin said, Diddy nor Cassie is going to pay our bills at the end of the day. They're going to go on with their lives. But before we get back into it, I want you all to hear what the person who accused Cassie and Diddy, the S worker, who's now suing them. I'm going to play a tidbit of what he had to say. And hold on. And people don't want to acknowledge that he also is a victim. And I find that interesting. Selective outrage. But let's listen to it.
Even though she kissed me, which is disgusting now that I know she was letting people urinate in her mouth. But this is the whole point of
He's laughing at Tasha K because she's spinning around in her chair.
Oh my God, man. Oh my God.
Keep going. You are an excellent storyteller, and we look forward to this book. I'm gonna give you a week's worth of promotion on this book across all my platforms. That is on me for keeping.
And let me say this for those of you who follow me on a regular basis, I am going to be reading you this book in a members only broadcast. Okay, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to scroll back to a little bit of the beginning of what he had to say.
Before summer, I also writing stuff like it's very good. But with Cosmo, my writing level dropped too.
I'm going to release the book. So now Diddy's team subpoenas my records for the book. What Tyrone does is he submits what's called a motion to squash, which is to squash the subpoena so he doesn't have to turn over the book.
It's a motion to squash.
Not squash. For the lawsuit that's going to be filed, and that's complete lie. I gave him a separate statement of facts and also had a 90-word manuscript.
Hold on, and let me just say this, by the way. This man also was supposedly meeting with the prosecution because he alleges that Cassie called him and asked him to testify. So he supposedly met with the prosecution. But once the prosecution heard what he had to say and it didn't jive with Cassie's narrative and her story, they didn't want him to testify, allegedly. Now, with that all being said, let's continue.
Okay. So you said he filed a motion to squash. He didn't want the book released. He didn't want the prosecution or Diddy's team to have your book.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So he filed a motion to squash. Because I was going to release it. I had put an Amazon free link, the one I sent to you. I had an editor who was contacting people. I believe my editor contacted TMZ. He might have contacted you also. He contacted a few people to get me before a podcast because I want to tell my story and it promotes the book. So when Tyrone saw the Amazon link, he realized, oh crap, this guy really did write a book. That's when it became a problem. And so like I was saying, Diddy's team, I believe it was what's the attorney's name? The one that did the Young Thug trial.
Brian Steele.
They subpoenaed. Yeah, Brian Steele. They subpoenaed the book. Tyrone contacts me maybe, I want to say, the second week of May saying, listen, they subpoenaed your book. They cannot get that book. I'm going to submit a motion to squash. I said, well, why can't they get the book? The U.S. Attorney's Office knows that I've said all of this stuff about Cassandra. It's not like it's new stuff. They know. I've been telling them for a year. He says, dude, that book would destroy her. I said, well, if I have to give him the book, I want to give him the book. He says, all right, let me take care of it. So I find out I think it was like May 17th, May 15th, that he submitted this motion to squash where he completely lied to the Judge Summarian, and he claimed that my book was actually privileged notes. Now, that's a lie because the book is not privileged notes. So the judge orders him to turn over the manuscript. I believe I contacted him a week after I find out the judge orders him to turn over the manuscript. And I asked him, I said, hey, did you turn over that manuscript? He said, hell no. Why would I do that? Are you crazy? No, if I turn over this manuscript, you're going to blow this case apart. I said, Tyrone, listen, I don't want a problem. Turn over the book. My phone does. So now when my phone starts back up, I send him a text message. Listen, brother, I don't want a problem with a federal judge. I'm going to release this book. Turn over the manuscript. I don't believe he still turned over the manuscript to the defense.
Canva has made my team so much time. We're able to work more collaboratively together.
Yeah, with that all being said, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. TC Dan says, I don't like Diddy, but I love the Constitution more. Well, I absolutely do too, honey. Don't take away any of my rights because I need them all. They already taken away freedom of speech in this country. Please pay attention.
Cassidy, I see your face. You're like, oh my God, yeah.
How many hours did you go?
Oh, the longest I ever had sex with was 4 days in Miami. You had to put your glasses on for that.
Okay, now hold on for a second. So when you have sex for 4 days, do you stop to pee? Do you take breaks? What happens?
Yeah. It's kind of like, you know something? People don't realize something. Diddy is rich. He's as rich as a king. I don't know if you've ever seen the HBO TV series Rome, like where there was with. Never saw you being afraid. The only time I saw you afraid is when he would catch you nutting behind his back when you told me to do it. So what are you talking about?
He's talking about Cassie.
Nutting behind his back. So which means like.
Good example. I remember a situation. He got a phone call. So the rules of these freak-offs or swinger parties was if he's watching as a voyeur, we can't do anything sexually when he's not there. And that's a basic trust issue between men and women who are involved in a swinger relationship. If you allow someone in your bedroom, you're expecting that person to follow the rules. Usually, if you're dealing with a couple where the man is consenting to you sleeping with his wife, the man is in control of that situation. So if he doesn't want you to do it, right, you can't. That's just the swinger lifestyle. If anyone who knows about the swinger lifestyle knows I'm telling the truth. If you've gone out and got someone in your bedroom, let's say for your husband, even if the woman likes the guy, she still has to defer to her husband. Because when that man leaves, you still got to live with your husband. It's common sense. So this is what Cassie would do. She would defer to Diddy just to make sure he was okay with the fact that she was giving me head, that she might want to keep having sex. And Cassie was insatiable. Diddy never made her have sex with me. He never insinuated, yo, why don't you take some D? He never said that. She would go, she would tell him I'm ready. He would say, okay, you can start. He would watch, but he would be more of a protector. He would make sure nothing happened to her. He was incredibly protective of her.
Now I'm gonna stop right there. With that all being said, he's suing Diddy and Cassie. Let me just say, so it doesn't look like he would have a reason to be lying for Diddy. Okay, now Mama Flip says, I also find it interesting that he's now suing. We're not going to check him for not stating he was SA'd earlier like the women. Well, he didn't say he was SA'd, beloved. He said that Cassie gave him an STD. With that being said, I don't think we should victim shame him by going in on him at the time he decided to come forward, because y'all didn't do that with Cassie or Jane Doe. Okay, selective outrage is what I keep saying, and we'll continue to reiterate. Nobody said anything about why Cassie waited all these years to come out and file a lawsuit against Diddy. And let's not forget, because I also saw some people talking trash about this man who's clearly a victim, just like I said. And in my opinion, at least, if Cassie's a victim, so is he. With that being said, people were going in and said, oh, he just wanted to write a book and get clout. Well, Cassie wanted to write a book too. Okay, that's how the lawsuit got started. She, in fact, argued, and her team was negotiating with Diddy's team, or as Diddy's team claims, extorting them for a period of 6 months, saying that if they did not give her $30 million, she was going to, in fact, write a tell-all book. Okay, so with that all being said, nobody seemed to have a problem with that. Okay, would you like to say something, Joy, and then we'll go back to Henny?
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you guys hear that allegedly he had got her pregnant and Cassie aborted the baby as well? Okay, along with the STD that he said that Cassie gave him. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. He said that she aborted the baby and then told him that she was sorry, that she wished she hadn't done it or whatever.
You're talking about the worker, not Diddy.
Talking about the worker, yes, not Diddy. Okay. So, Henny, you have anything you want to go ahead and say, beloved?
Oh, yeah, I do, because the selective outrage goes both ways. Because if Cassie and them are not victims, then neither is he. Because
nobody said Cassie wasn't a victim.
Unlike them, he was being paid, hired for his service. He was hired help.
They were being paid too by living a lavish lifestyle.
This is what his profession was. And I do find it quite odd that he releases a book right around the time of the verdict. The case is coming to an end. Now he's dropping his lawsuit. So yeah, if we're going to be suspicious and pick everything apart, then he goes underneath the scrutiny as well. Now, absolutely. as far as his lawsuit goes and what he has actually said, he is going for ex trafficking. He's going for civil remedies for human trafficking. He's going for what else is he going for? He's hitting them with human trafficking on 3 different levels.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also suing them for assault, actual assault underneath the California statute. Um, Civil liability. He's suing them also for lost wages. This man in his own lawsuit has said that he had clients, that he was a male provider. There were a lot of contradictions throughout that lawsuit, and I listened to it. My thing is, okay, if this is what he went through and he wants to go for it, fine. What I can say, salute and tip my hat to, is you going after both of them and not just one of them. But the
Right.
selective
As he
outrage is
should, if that's the case.
definitely on both ends of the scale, because I'm looking at comments on other places in social media where I'm seeing people wanting to step up and stand up, but you the same people that was in the comment sections that was tearing down other allegations that was going on. So my thing is, victims are victims, and those who are not victims are not victims. And I feel like, in all honesty, everybody in this situation, if you want my honest opinion, all of them were brought into this for one man's fantasy. And as far as talking about being in people's bedrooms, I'm not hiring an escort or uh, um, a S worker to come into my bedroom and sleep with me and my man. And my man is not hiring a male one to come in and sleep with me. That is prostitution, and that is illegal. So when you're talking about doing things like that, then yeah, there's a difference. It's not just a matter of man and woman in the bedroom. You're talking about bringing in somebody who you're paying to actually bed down your partner. That is illegal. So yes, I get it, because I was saying the same thing. Well, are they going to start policing our bedrooms? No, the thing is, there was an illegal act happening in that bedroom. And
well, let me say this,
like
beloved.
I
It
said,
was a whole overreach,
Hold
though.
on, hold on,
that
Gavin.
wasn't an overreach, because prostitution is illegal in every state except for Nevada.
It
And
is
Well,
an.
so
let me
I'm
say
gonna.
this.
It is an. The whole trial.
Hold
This
on,
federal.
Gavin. Hold
I
on,
wasn't
hold
finished.
on. Hold
Not
Go
on.
only
Let
ahead.
her
that,
Go ahead.
finish.
the reason I say that they dropped the ball with that dealing in obscene matters is that if you put
Mm-hmm.
those freak off tapes and what we've heard about against the Miller test, they're going to pass the Miller test, which means they're going to be obscene. Those things were grotesque. I'm not in here letting no man pee in my mouth. Okay, I'm
Right.
not having that going on. So I'm not having obscene things happen in the bedroom either that are going to be too shocking. Now, if it's me and my man and we're doing those things, then yes, the government has no business to be in my bedroom. But when I bring criminal acts into my bedroom, that makes it different. And that's just my stance on it.
Well, you're
That's
absolutely
Okay.
right. And no one, hold on. You're absolutely right. I don't think anyone suggested that what Diddy was doing in the bedroom wasn't illegal because he got convicted of it. The Mann Act. He was hiring prostitutes, male escorts, or whatever. But what I was talking about, I'll speak for myself because I know some other people were saying the same thing. But what I was talking about was the fact that, as far as Gavin saying, bringing police in your bedroom, he gave an example. Okay, so I think you may have taken it out of context or misunderstood what he was saying. But he said that's just like if he has a girlfriend and he flies her to a different state for relations with her, that can be considered as trafficking or a violation of the Mann Act. Okay, that shouldn't be illegal because that's your woman. But that's the same thing they arrested Jack Johnson for. These women, when they first came up with this law, just to get Jack Johnson. So the law itself, the Mann Act, is rooted in racism. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is, if they're going to use that, to say that people are engaging in nefarious acts in their own bedroom, not hiring prostitutes, because Gavin didn't say anything about hiring a prostitute. He said if he invites his own girlfriend. Well, that's exactly what they did to Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
Jack Johnson didn't hire prostitutes. He was dating those white women, and they were mad about it. That's why they did that to him. So that's all we were saying. They were trying to use this to set up. And then you can charge somebody with S trafficking, and then now next thing you know, you're hit with a RICO just because you had your own girlfriend come out and travel to see you or whatever. Okay, go ahead, Gavin, because I see your.
What I'm saying is this. So I want no. It is an overreach because first off, that, like I say again, we don't see the feds that often do what they did in this case, where you spend millions of dollars. And granted, this started last year, where you had Homeland Security raid Diddy's homes in Florida. He raided his homes in Los Angeles and New York. They get involved, and they made this whole indictment. I can't remember. It was a 9-page indictment, especially with the baby oil and so forth. and they treated it like he had a pound. He was this. They treated him like he was Ghost from Power. That's the point I was making. This
Right.
was the overreach, and we are talking about regulation. You mentioned prostitution. That is typically a misdemeanor charge in all states, unless, of course, yes, they have the federal violation of Mann Acts. It did not have to something like that. And you also got to remember this too. There was also, I believe, was a statute of limitations defense. I don't know if Diddy's team had brought this up because we're talking about 15, 10 years ago, and there's limits with that. They tried to bring all of this in, and it was a reach. And that's why a lot of people do it. Now, yes, he got convicted on those charges, but like I said again, typically something like that, he probably, that's, like Jack Johnson did, he only got 1 year in jail for that. 1 year in prison, I should say, on that charge. We have to look at why they were getting involved, especially with that. And let's also look at this because someone said, well, it only happens if you're abused or neglected in some way. Who's to say if it's my girlfriend, I take her out, and let's just say the relationship goes bad a year or two ago, and she doesn't mention this to authorities? Well, no, he did this to me. Those are grounds for that. They can use that
That
against.
was my point.
That's
Exactly.
the point of
Exactly.
all of this
It's
stuff.
not just
And
about Diddy, it's bigger than Diddy. And that's what people need to realize,
it's
especially if you're a person of my skin tone.
and let me just bring this up. I don't, the worker who's filing the lawsuit, Henny, I'll just bring this up. Probably the reason why he's filing this now. And yes, I think all of this is about money. Of course, at the end of the day, I'll say that he has her sworn testimony that she's given in court, and they can use that or try and use that against you. Remember, here's another aspect of all of this. In California, in New York, I believe in Nevada, New Jersey, and other states, they have changed these laws where they have amended the statute of limitations. They do look back laws in New York. Like, for instance, the guy from Twisted Sister, do you know Dee Snider? Do y'all
Yes,
know he was being
absolutely. I know who
sued?
that is. Rockstar.
Yeah, he was being sued for something from 1989. Antonio Reed, the L.A. Reid, the music executive and songwriter with Babyface, he's being sued. So, and Diddy got sued under that statute as well. So in New York. So I'm sorry, Queen.
Go ahead. I have a question for you when you finish.
So that is part of probably the reason. Now I don't know, and I haven't read his lawsuit. I don't know where he filed it at, but that might be the reason why he's filing it now, because now that the lawsuit is over, they can use that against you. Because all you have to do too, if you get convicted also in criminal court, and you want to sue somebody, you know what you can do. If a person gets a conviction, you go to the clerk of court and just get a certified copy of the minutes, and you can attach it to your petition. So you can
Exactly. So
attach
that's why he
that.
waited.
And you can also wait till you get the court reporters, the testimony, the testimony from the court, the transcripts, and you can use that as well as evidence, because that's sworn testimony. That's considered, and especially if it's certified, you don't have to bring, for instance, Cassie doesn't have to come in and testify, or Diddy doesn't have, well, Diddy didn't take the stand, but the workers who testified, they don't have to come in. They can use that against it. So that's part of the reason why they did that. That's my guess on why he waited. But yeah, do I think this is all about money? Of course it is. He wouldn't be
Yeah.
suing if it wasn't.
It's all about money. And so was it with Cassie and Jane Doe, because they never went to the police. If you want justice, you go to the police. And people can say she was scared. They were scared, this, that, the third. But I would be more scared of trying to take somebody. If I thought that that person was dangerous, I'd be more scared of going after their money and more likely to go to the police. Okay, now, Gavin, here's the question I have for you, beloved. Let's talk about former Governor Elliot Spitzer, okay, who in New York was caught up in the Emperor's Room. Wasn't that the name of that little prostitution ring they had, the Emperor's Club? Remember that? Okay, and how the
Not
people that
exactly.
owned, okay, so the people that owned the Emperor's Club, which was the prostitution ring, those people were indicted, and they were charged with violations of the Mann Act, right? One of them was a black woman named Tamika Smith. Her attorney at the time was Mark Agnifilo, Diddy's attorney. With that being said, Governor Spitzer was the client. They had proof and receipts that he was paying these people for their services and whatnot. They, however, decided not to convict him or to indict him. Don't you find that interesting? And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't remember exactly that typical case. I think that was in. I'm trying to remember, but I think that
That
was
was around
2008.
2008, somewhere around
Okay,
that
I'm reading
time.
that. So, well, prosecutors. Here's another thing with this, and this is why I'm explaining this to everybody here. Prosecutors have discretion, of
Right.
course, when they want to bring charges against someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Certain cases, certain stuff, they can decide whether or not they want to prosecute anybody. They can do that. Keep in mind, the most powerful person in the courtroom, and it's not really the judge; it's the prosecutor. The judge is the referee inside the courtroom and can regulate stuff, but the prosecutor can bring forth charges if they want. And probably with this particular case with Spitzer, I'm not quite sure exactly what the deal was, but maybe because he had ties with certain people.
Right, because he was
Uh,
the governor.
he was the governor
He
of
ended up
New York.
stepping down
Even
after.
even the former governor Cuomo was accused of doing some stuff during Me Too, but he wasn't charged with anything.
Right.
You know, they typically they don't. And New York is a very democratic city. Let's just put it like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they're very protective of a lot of their leaders. Cuomo even had a scandal with the COVID-19 thing where people there was a nursing home incidents. I'll just put it that way
Right.
with it. But yeah, so they can be very protective of their people. I
So
think
that's what I'm saying. But justice is supposed to be blind because the main people being hit with the Mann Act charges are people of my skin tone.
right. But
That's my point.
Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, was accused of
That's trafficking. I reported on
yeah,
that years ago when
right.
it happened. Now, and that's another thing. These stories with other people like Mike Jeffries, Peter Nygaard, people rarely cover those stories. Peter Nygaard was so much worse than Diddy. Now he has been convicted, but after how many years of him doing the various things?
Mhm.
Okay, retired federal officer Carol Banks, shout out to you, beloved. Okay, says original queen, excellent analysis, professor. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. Okay, now Mama Flip says the reason everyone is going so hard is because it's Diddy. We all understand that he is special to many people. He will not be able to stop, and we have other cases, so we know next time he will get got. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going hard for Diddy, but what I am going hard for is justice. I don't give a damn about Diddy. I've said it a myriad of times. I don't like Diddy till this day. But the bottom line is, like I said, if they can indict Diddy on something and then prove that he did it, okay, then more power to them. But in this case, they did not prove their case. And I'm always going to be for justice because
Sure.
if they can get away with doing that to Diddy, just
Mhm.
like they did that whole thing with Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby should
Oh man.
never have been indicted because of what the previous prosecutors said. But they went ahead and
Mhm.
indicted him and convicted him and put him in prison. And then when he
Mhm.
was let go, people tried to lie and say, oh, it was just a technicality. No, it wasn't a technicality. They had no business putting that man in jail or even putting him on trial in the first place. But this is what they do. That's why
Mhm.
people who look like me really need to get out of your emotions, okay?
Mhm.
And think about the consequences of a nefarious justice judicial system, okay? The
Mhm.
criminal justice system literally has criminals working in it. And some of these people will absolutely let people who look like them get away with things. Why do you think that Michael Jeffries, the former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch,
Mhm.
has not been brought forth, even though he was charged? They're now saying that he has dementia. Okay,
Yes.
they gave him a bail, but didn't give
Mhm.
Diddy one. They claimed it was because of his age. What does
Mhm.
age do with it when you have the same resources? You have
Mhm.
a private jet, just like Diddy did, but he
Mhm.
had the complexion for the protection. And that's just my opinion on that. So I'm not going to ever ride with racism. I don't care who it's being presented against, whether I like the person or not. I'm never going to ride and take the side of wanton supremacy that has been used for centuries to oppress people who look like me. I'm never going to take the side of a judicial system that is stacked against us. And when I see racism being played out into the courtroom or racial bias, shall I say, I'm never going to take the side of that. And that's exactly what I saw when I went down to the courthouse. Okay.
Mhm.
When I got there week 3, the end of the day, I didn't see that before because you don't get to grasp the whole context or the full context and concept of what's going on when you're just getting updates from YouTube or from the inner city press and things like that. But when you're sitting right there and you
Nancy
see how things
Grace.
are playing out, Nancy Grace with her no good stuff, you better watch out before she gets a lawsuit
That's
for having a liar who lies come on there and spread lies about me and other people. Okay, now with that all being said,
Queen.
Henny,
Can I say something on Nancy Grace
sure,
real
go
quick?
ahead.
Just as Judge Joe Brown would say, she's nothing but a sleaze bag, con artist. You know how she made her money, how she got her start. I'll be brief with this. Was the O.J. Simpson case.
Yes.
She would never go into, according to the judge, she would never go into court and even comment, but she would make remarks about how bad the case was looking for OJ and so forth when
Mm-hmm.
OJ's team was getting victories in there, Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey. So she's has always done salacious stuff, and she'll put up, in my opinion, she'll put falsehoods there to mislead the public. Same thing with uh, a lot of these peak commentators you see mostly on mainstream media, and that's
Mm-hmm.
all of them: MSNBC, CBS, NBC, ABC,
Pushing fake
Fox.
narratives and
Yes.
lies.
Right. They have
Yes.
they have an agenda. It's
Mm-hmm.
because television programming is run by corporations.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Facts.
trying to sell
Okay.
ads.
Now
Yeah.
let me say one more thing to Mama Flip. I absolutely agree with you saying that you say he won't be able to stop and next time he'll get got. Well, if he isn't able to stop, then the next time he should absolutely get got because he should have learned a lesson from this. I would hope that he would. And also let me say this, Gavin, which I thought was unfair, that they didn't allow in certain evidence. Okay, they didn't want them to talk about Cassie's STDs. Now we know why, because this man had
Mm-hmm.
a lawsuit coming, okay, and he was just waiting for this to be over with. Okay, they said the defense, the prosecution said that they asked the judge to not allow the defense to speak on Cassie's STDs. Now we see why. And then they also said there could be no pictures or any information brought in about Kim Porter because they didn't want any sympathy for Diddy or his children. That if he was facing a life sentence, that basically they may not have a mother or father available to them. And then the last thing was there was something else. Oh, the fact that Diddy supposedly was entered into a battered women's or battering program because of his violence and him beating women. And they said that Jane Doe supposedly allowed or helped him to get into that program. And they wanted the people, the person who was like the program director or the person who was there while he was doing the treatment process, wanted that person to be able to testify. But supposedly they didn't even want any of that entered in. So it just
Mm-hmm.
goes show that they were painting a narrative. And let me say this one last thing. It's very interesting how they did these things and how they, really tried to make it so the odds were stacked in the prosecution's favor, in my opinion. But I have literally seen a case where there was a Caucasian man who was charged with, I forget what he was charged with, but it was something nefarious. But he had all these tattoos on his face and neck and head, and he was supposed to be a wanton supremacist. But before they brought him into the courtroom every day, they would get him out of his cell at least 3 hours early and have makeup artists put makeup on him to cover up all of those tattoos. Because if you look at him, he looked like a whole thug. But when he walked in there with all the tattoos covered, wearing a suit and tie, he looked like maybe he didn't do it. So appearance and optics also has a lot to do with it when we go into the courtroom, specifically as it pertains to people who look like me.
Well,
Okay. Now, with that all being said, Henny, you can say something, beloved, if you have anything to say, and then we'll go to Joy. And then we're going to get out of here in the next 15 minutes or so.
Well, I just want to say, after watching this case, there's been a lot of things that I have noticed as a people and as the system. Number one of the things that I did do with my coverage was I did not take a side. I showed everybody how the prosecution was stacking their case. I broke down everything from the testimony, what they were trying to say, and I was telling people the DV is being charged as force in this case. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to change it from force, change it to force. If from assault to force. That's where we're at. So I did a lot of work on looking at this,
You absolutely
analyzing this
did.
whole case when it comes down to things. But the thing that I want to say to everyone that's out fighting in the comment sections and fighting each other on screens and all of that stuff, let me just say this. As a society, what I will say is everybody showed their natural tail. No matter what color it was, they showed their tail. Because instead of looking at the facts of this case and understanding the severity of what was going on, everybody picked a side. And I will say this, I am a person who does advocate for victims, but I do also know that sometimes people fabricate stories to make themselves become a victim. So I'm not blind to all of that stuff. But what I am going to say is this. When it comes down to our people have to learn to depend on us, because it
Mm-hmm.
was us that brought Bad Boy to the level that it was. It was us that helped him to take Ciroc from being a $75,000 a year liquor to $1 billion brand. We did that. We helped him. We carried him. So we have to stop going and turning to the very people that will turn against us the minute that it seems comfortable for them. Um, I also feel that there are a lot of things that we as people, we have to work on as a whole. Because the one thing that a lot of people have been doing, and it hasn't been here, I haven't seen it in the chat. I've been looking at the chat, and nobody has disrespected anybody on the panel. So I respect everybody that is here, but we have to learn to respect one another, because we don't. All right. The first thing that I've been hearing is because it's a woman, she's lying. We have to stop that. All right. This
Yeah.
case showed us that privilege and power is just as addicting as any substance that somebody can take. And a lot of our entrepreneurs are icons that have climbed the ladder. We watch them fall, being drunk off of that power, and then falling into perversions that were taught to them. So let's
Absolutely.
all look at this and analyze it and pick it apart and use intellect when we do it. I do agree. Logic, law over emotions definitely prevails. I am a person who's very passionate about the things that I say because I'm intentional. I mean what I say when I say it. But yeah, we really have to start educating ourselves with law so that we understand when they start coming to attack us, what they're attacking us with and how to counteract it. One of the things with the art of war is you have to know your enemy, and a lot of us don't. So
Absolutely, and the 48 laws of power as well. Now, with that all being said, thank you for that, Hennessy. Very eloquently said. Mama Flip says, I find it interesting that because I stand strong with survivors, that I do not know what I'm talking about. Beloved, no one said on this panel, at least, no one on the panel said that you didn't know what you're talking about. Okay, no one said that at all. At the end of the day, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And on this channel, we welcome contrary views and opinions. There's never an issue with that on my platform, as long as everything is done respectfully without calling people nasty names or going in on people like that. Okay, so that all being said, absolutely, you have every right to feel how you feel, and other people have the right to disagree. But no one said you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, now, with that being said, Joy, would you like to say anything before we get ready to close out?
Yes, I'm glad everything pretty much is over, of course, as a lot of people
Me?
probably are. But at the same time, I was thinking one way at the beginning of the trial. I was, going hard, saying Diddy is a monster, he's nasty, demonic, this, that, and the third. Of course, like a lot of people, he's not a pleasant person. And everybody knows that. But at the same time, as time went along, I started hearing testimony. I wasn't there for, nothing but like 3 days. Well, actually 2 days of actual testimony. But as time came on, went along, it was just getting a little bit different and weird. Cause like, we were talking about, the mainstream media was talking about these tapes, talking about this, talking about that. So we're expecting, the minors, where's these tapes at? Where's this at? Where's that at? And then it, to me, just turned into a whole different type of case. So at the end of the day, I had to sit back and just think about what was really going on and seeing what I see for what it's really worth. So at the end of the day, it's just, I'm glad it's over.
Right. Okay. I am too. Okay. D Major said, why that lady in the upper right hand corner got an attitude? I don't think she has an attitude,
I
beloved. I think
don't.
she just may be passionate about what she thinks. And I wouldn't say she had an attitude. Okay. So Mama Flip says, it's interesting, a strong advocate who marched with BLM fought against GV, or did you mean DV, I think, and have a black celebrity son can be easily fooled in thinking Diddy is a poor, innocent black male. Nobody said he was innocent. Nobody said that. We're saying that he was found not guilty of the charges. So, yeah, he is innocent to that degree of the racketeering and the S trafficking. Now, the domestic violence, we all know he's guilty of that. We saw it. He himself admitted it when he gave that apology. He wouldn't have apologized had he not been guilty of it. He would not have gone to a battering women's program if he did not feel that he was battering women. So nobody is saying that. I don't want people to get it misconstrued, and I don't want narratives to be painted just because we all may have some disagreements. At the end of the day, the bottom line is this. Now, Henny said some people took sides, and many people did take sides. I never sided with Diddy, okay? I never sided with the prosecution. At the end of the day, I sided with truth and justice, okay? That's why I went to school for criminal justice. That's why I'm a criminal justice professor, because I like to know the law, and I know that people who look like me very often don't know the law, and that's how we get played. And we don't understand some of the consequences of different laws that they pass. And in fact, sometimes when things don't go the way that the prosecution wants it, as it pertains to people who look like me, then they change the field goal, or they change the goalpost. Okay, and then they want to change laws and rewrite them. Okay, just like in the case of Brian Nichols, for example, when he shot up the courthouse here in Fulton County, and then people wanted him to get the death penalty, but they didn't reach a unanimous decision, so therefore he didn't get the death penalty. All of a sudden now they're saying, oh, well, let's change it so that it doesn't have to be a unanimous decision. Now, would they have done that if it was someone who was Caucasian? I don't think so. And I also don't think they would have even been offering him the death penalty. They'd have been trying to go for life in prison, in my opinion. And where's that white man who killed those black people at the Kroger in Jeffersontown, Kentucky, okay, a few years ago? Because is he still mentally incompetent to stand trial? So I look at all of these things, and I am someone who has always been advocating for people who look like me specifically, as well as for victims. Check my resume and look at the lives that I've done. My best friend is a victim of S assault. I myself am a victim of S assault. And I've told you all, Lawyer Royals, you know that I have told you all the story about that. With that all being said, I'm always for victims, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and act like Cassie or Jane Doe are the equivalent of a Centoya Brown who was actually trafficked and then had to spend time in prison for murking the person who trafficked her. That's what I'm not going to do. Okay, people need to be held accountable for their actions. And at the end of the day, it looks like a whole lot of people don't want to hold either of those women accountable for the roles that they, in fact, played in it. You could have left at any time. It was about the money, is why they stayed, the power, the prestige, the lavish lifestyles, being next and having a closeness to A-list celebrities. That's why Cassie said, oh, who am I going to date? Because Jay-Z's already taken. Okay, at the end of the day, that's why Jane Doe said, well, how much is my body worth? Okay, so when I hear things like that, at the end of the day, I don't have the same amount of empathy and sympathy for you as I would for a Centoya Brown or any other young woman who was actually trafficked by force and clearly victimized without ever having any say so in it or ever giving anyone the permission to do so, no matter the reason. That's what I'm not going to do. And that's my stance on that. I'm not saying that I never said that Cassie and Jane were not victims. But what I did say is that they should be held accountable for the roles that they in fact played. Because at any time they could have done something different, going to the police. But instead, Cassie filed a civil lawsuit, and that is her prerogative to do so. Okay.
What is
so
you
Gavin,
guys?
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was wondering, what is you guys' take? Because one of the workers came, and put the lawsuit on Cassie and Diddy. Do you guys think that some of the other ones are gonna come out and put lawsuits on Cassie or Diddy too? Because only, I think, what, 2 or 3 of them testified, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Daniel Phillips testified. And then it was Sheree Hayes, aka the Punisher. Those 2 testified. So you're saying, do you think the other ones will come out with lawsuits?
Yeah.
They just may. And here's the thing, they just may. Now, this guy, Clayton Howard, known as Dave, he was mentioned a myriad of times during the trial. So I think that he may be able to prove his civil allegations. I don't know. I haven't read the actual lawsuit. That's why Henny said that he also accused him of S assault. See, I didn't know all of that. I just went by some of the things he said in that interview, but I didn't read his lawsuit as of yet, but I will read it. But with that being said, dark skinned German says, what's interesting is how black people were turned on black moguls quick as hell based on the media. Well, that is true. People do often judge people in the court of public opinion before they get the facts and the details. But we know Diddy is nefarious. Okay, we know that Diddy has cheated his people out of his artists, out of publishing. We know that he has just done nefarious things. We've known for years that he was putting paws on women. Okay, we know about the incident with the shootout in the club. We know about the incident with City College. We know about all of those things. But as I said before, we know about the rumors about him having something possibly to do with the deaths of Tupac, Biggie, and Kim Porter, even is what people have said. We don't know any of those things are factual, but we've all heard the rumors. And like I said weeks ago, that if he is put on trial for any of those any of those rumors about murders or whatever, then found guilty, he absolutely should get a life sentence. But for this case that the prosecution presented it, and in the way they presented it, I absolutely do not think that he deserved a life sentence. And we should judge people based on the facts, the proof, and the evidence, not our feelings or rumors, or because that's hearsay, which is not even admitted, or which is not even admissible in the court of law. Okay, so dark skinned German, thank you for your contribution to the channel and for your insight into the topic, beloved. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Now,
can Jamil show you guys something real quick?
Hold on. Retired federal police officer Carol Banks says the art of war for lawyers. Okay. Now, with that all being said, what is he going to show? Because I don't want it to be anything that has music or anything that can give me a copyright claim or anything like that.
Tell her is what Jane Doe just posted in the house that Diddy's paying for now.
Oh,
this is what she just
Is it
posted.
okay? Is it okay?
Yes, please show that.
So, if you guys don't know, my hubby Jamil Peterson, Mr. I Am Comedy, he's on YouTube as well. But he just seen, I guess
Jane Doe just posted that. Jane Doe just posted on Instagram.
Y'all know Jamil does comedy, so y'all know he's gonna come over here and cut up.
That's the house that Diddy paid for. That's the house Diddy paid for.
So I guess
that's right. And so here's the thing. If she's such a victim, as some people will still say, I'm not saying she wasn't victimized when he put paws on her, but at the end of the day, if she was a victim of the sexual assault or any of those things, why would she allow him to pay for her attorney's legal fees and to pay for her house? I wouldn't want that man doing any damn thing for me. Okay. That's what I wouldn't want. Okay. And that goes for Cassie as well, because Cassie going back to Diddy and still having relations with him. And then, like Mark Agnifilo said, saying that she was raped by Diddy, okay, in August, but then in October, you had more relations with him. Now, people want to say that was Stockholm Syndrome. No, I think it was her being a whole Karen, as we know that some women have done for years, and blaming it, calling rape when they voluntarily had relations with a black man. But now, when she's afraid that Alex Fine is going to find out about what she did, then all of a sudden it's great. I didn't buy that story from day one, and the jury obviously didn't buy it either.
And that's like where Mia stuck, because I was at the courthouse when Mia was testifying on the stand. So her testimony really, really stuck. I think she's probably going to be the one I talk about probably forever, right? But when she was talking and she was saying some of the things, like, I can't say when a person is going to report this or report that, but it was very, very, like, kind of, had me thinking that if somebody grapes you, why would you be continuing the messaging? Why would you be making them a scrapbook? Why would you be texting them? Why would you be calling them? And then even a year or however long after, you are no longer working with Diddy. So I feel like with Mia, it's like, she was saying that Diddy graped her. And I was like listening to her testimony, and I said, really, it seems like, I'm not going to victim shame because, she's probably has some type of trauma from something, right? However, I feel like she was a side chick to Diddy and Cassie, because when Diddy got her phone, she didn't want whatever was in the phone to go to Cassie, because Diddy said he was going to, send, Cassie this whatever information. I feel like it was something probably sexual.
He was going to tell Cassie that him and her were having relations. Yes. And she said that Diddy raped her too. And I don't believe that, because at the end of the day, why didn't you report it? Okay. Yes. And also, if he raped you, why would he be threatening to tell Cassie what y'all did? Okay. Exactly. That was my question as well.
And I feel like she was throwing the grape card in there when it was convenient for her. That's just my opinion and listening
Typical
to her.
Karen behavior, and Cassie
Yes.
engaged in it too.
Yeah.
Okay, Mama Flip says the reason Diddy got away with these crimes is because he is a rich billionaire. If he was a regular guy, he would have been charged by. Well, with that being said, that may be true. But I'll tell you this, beloved, if he were a regular guy, he wouldn't have been in this situation to begin with. Because Cassie nor Jane Doe
money.
and giving him the time of day.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
they were with Diddy because Diddy had bank. Again, let me reiterate that Cassie said, "Who am I going to date?" Jay-Z's already taken. That lets you know that she wanted someone with money. Okay, and then when she got with Alex Fine, who had no money, that's when she decided to sue Diddy, in my opinion, because they were living with her family, them and their children, living in Connecticut with her family in October of 2023. And conveniently, she filed a lawsuit against Diddy in November after she couldn't get him to go ahead and settle for or give her the $30 million before she was going to write that book. Okay, and let's not forget how she was trying to go on tour, but she canceled that tour when she got the $20 million from Diddy. And now she's getting $10 million from the hotel as well. So with that all being said, I'm just looking at the facts and of everything, and basically that's how I came to my conclusion at the end of the day that yes, Cassie and Jane Doe were victims, and they were victims of violence, not of S trafficking, in my opinion. And like I said, the jury clearly didn't think that either.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to close out. Gavin, do you have any closing words before we roll
Yes, I
out?
do have some closing words. I want to thank you and the lovely ladies Joy and Henny on the panel for a great discussion, a spirited discussion. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and comment. I want to say something, and Queen. I also, when you mentioned Bill Cosby, I wrote a book, The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby, which is the same. It's almost similar to what we're seeing with Diddy, but we're seeing also with other black men, Smokey Robinson. Um, you've had Smokey Robinson, you have Cuba Gooding Jr., you had even Jay-Z with this with stuff that they've been accused of some sorts, and it's almost sort of the similar playbook that goes on. But there also has to be accountability on both sides. Some of these women, a lot of them were groupies. If you're familiar with the term sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that was stuff that's going on from the 60s and 50s, where women would sleep around with men, powerful men, famous men, to either advance their lifestyle, or their careers in some way, shape, or form. So I talked about, and I'm going to try immorality versus legality, and the two different things. And I heard people say, "Well, Diddy is this bad guy," and like I said, I think he's a scumbag. But let's look at this, for instance. I have had, as a defense attorney, now maybe you may think I'm a little biased, but I'm following the Constitution, which states due process. And yes, I do see things as a defense attorney on
Right.
something. So I'm cautious because that's what our law says. Everybody's presumed innocent. But I have represented rapists. I've represented people who've acted in attempted homicides. I've represented burglars, robbers, and so forth. And and drug dealers. And I had represented one drug dealer, and I'm going to give this example for everybody. And Queen, I told you this story, who was accused
Mhm.
of putting hands on the mother of his two daughters. And he maintained and even told me, "Yes, Mr. Richard, I sell drugs, but I don't put my hands on women. I've never have." And the prosecutors wanted to nail him to the cross, and pun intended, they didn't want to offer him nothing, no deals, no breaks, anything, because he had a bad record. His girlfriend had sent an affidavit stating she had made the whole thing up. She called 911. They took pictures. They had the cops come out actually to go after him when he had the car, and she had no injuries, no bruises, nothing. But he got charged with putting hands on her, also flight from an officer, and some driving without a license. She didn't come to court, and when it was near the end and it was my turn to put on my defense, she finally came to court and showed up and admitted she made the whole thing up. And when I asked her why, she said because she didn't want to, she was upset he was looking at other girls on Facebook. So the point that I'm making to this, and with that being said, and he did get acquitted on the most serious charge with that.
Mm-hmm.
The point that I'm making with all of that is we can't be so gun ho because we don't like a person. And that person who I just described, who was a real person, might very well. I think we all can agree a drug dealer is bad for dealing, is bad for the community.
Absolutely.
It's bad. At the same time, is it also right to go lie on someone because you didn't like the fact that he was looking at another girl? You could just break up with them. You could have just actually gone on. You got the police involved, and what you did actually was a crime in of itself. No, my client didn't do it. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, Tyler. Whatever. So at the end of the day, yeah, people get upset and emotional, and this is what I'm talking about. You're proving my point. You're being
Exactly.
open with these stuff and looking at these things and thinking that. And we have to take things on a case by case basis, and let's look at the facts, because remember, there have been even innocent people who have been wrongfully prosecuted in our justice system that look like us, that shouldn't have been there. We can go back to the Scottsboro boys and the George Steiny Juniors and so forth.
Thank you. And let me say this, Gavin, just to interrupt for a brief moment. From 2008, I want to say, I forget the exact dates, but there was at least, or there have been at least 200 and something people exonerated from death row because of wrongful convictions that were later proven to have been wrongful convictions due to DNA testing. So the bottom line is you cannot ever just assume something because of what is being presented by the media, specifically, who is a whole propagandist machine, or without knowing all of the facts. Okay, and just because somebody claims to be a victim and says certain things doesn't mean that those things are always true. But you can continue.
No, I'm finished. I'm actually just looking at the comments. I see
Okay.
some
Well,
people are caught up in.
let
Yeah.
me read two more comments. Marie James says if they also got an STD, they just might. Look at Jonathan Oddie. Exactly, because Jonathan Oddie sued Diddy over an STD. Okay. And somebody said Diddy's a scumbag. Well, of course he's a scumbag. I mean, anybody that beats a woman like that the way he did is absolutely a scumbag. And again, this was not about Diddy for me. This was about justice. Okay. Mama Flip says there were many testimony that she tried to leave and he used his staff members to bring her back. The reason she got away when she did is because he wanted Gina more than Cassie. The reason she got away when she did is because she decided to leave because she was upset that Diddy didn't choose her as number one. She said that herself. And also, after the fact, she went to Kim Porter's funeral, if you all remember, and she said that Diddy called Kim Porter his soulmate. And she said she asked him, well, what were the 11 years we had? Now, if this man has traumatized you, beaten you, and made you do all these freak offs and all these things you didn't want to do, as trafficked you, and you fear for your life and all of these things, and held you when you didn't want to stay, at the end of the day, why do you give a darn about going to see how his well being is at someone's funeral? And furthermore, why do you care? Okay, because clearly you'd moved on by this time and had Alex Fine. So why do you care if he says that the mother of his children was his soulmate? And let's also talk about not Gina, but Jane Doe. Jane Doe also was upset about the other women that Diddy was seeing. Okay, she talked about she didn't say Young Miami's name, but she talked about someone going to the Chanel store and all of that, which we know that was Young Miami because there's a whole video about it. So the bottom line is, just like Gavin said that his client, the girlfriend, claimed that she was lying on him and that she did it because he was looking at other women. That's the same reason they were both mad, Cassie and Jane Doe. They said it themselves that he was dating other women, and they had a problem with that. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have a problem with other things that he did, but that was the main problem that they had, is the other women. Okay. And I just find that all interesting. So, with that all being said, I'm going to conclude the broadcast. I want to thank everybody for their insight into the topic. And whether we agree or disagree, everyone was respectful. And so, thank you all
Hold
for
on,
tuning
Queen.
in.
Hold on, Queen. I just want to say something. My computer is dying. So what
Mm-hmm.
you guys are seeing is my face being slowed down and caught in
Okay.
glitchy. So I do not listen, everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and that's how I feel about it. I don't judge anybody. Me and Queen had a
Right.
very passionate conversation in the cafeteria, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't stop anything. At the end of the day, I love Queen, okay. I listen. The first day I saw her she was walking, and her face looked like how I was feeling after coming out of court, because we were in a whole
Mm-hmm.
we got spun that day in court. So at the end of the day, I don't have anything against Gavin or Lounge that's down there in the corner or any of y'all that are in the comments. Because let me tell you something. When I shut this computer off, my life continues on the opposite side of the screen. Now, if you
That's
have my
right.
number and can reach out to me, then that means I've invited you into my life. And I don't just invite people into my life. I'm very picky about who's around me. But I don't have an attitude. As you see right now, I'm talking and it's catching my face and I'm very animated when I talk. I'm from New York. I'm passionate when I talk about things, okay? And then I got my kids coming in and out the room. So they're interrupting and things like that are going on. But trust me, I don't have an attitude, honey. And I see y'all over there like, oh, she got a bad attitude. No, you see, I'm being caught up in frames and glitches. But I do want to say thank you very much for having me up on this panel. It was wonderful to be up here. And I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, beloved. Okay. And I love you too. Okay. Now, with that being said, Gary the Snail, I think that says he is not a hero. Absolutely, he isn't, honey. No one on here said he was. Okay. Spirit of Justice says conspiracy theories are dangerous. I absolutely agree. And then Ninja Please says, not Ninja Please, I love it. Says Diddy is a horrible person, but a mob boss. None of us ever thought that. I absolutely agree with that as well. Okay, so listen, this has been a very shall I say, I don't want to say entertaining, but this has been a very insightful broadcast and panel. And you know, when we have panel discussions, Gavin can tell you, we're not always going to agree. I have literally gone in, and I love Gavin dearly. That is my ace. Okay. But I have literally gone in on Gavin several times on lives because we disagree. He doesn't pay me any attention. He just states the facts and keeps it pushing. Okay. Because he knows I'm very opinionated and can be very opinionated. And as I said at the beginning with this whole thing with Diddy, I was very biased. But I had to realize you can't be in your feelings. You got to look at the facts. And that's just what I would implore us all to do. Okay, Mama Flip, I think you're magnificent. I met you briefly, okay, while we were there. And at the end of the day, listen, I don't think that you don't know what you're talking about. I absolutely think that you do. But we just disagreed on certain things. Okay, now Jamil says, great show, Queen, Cassie, and Jane Ho was no victims. They was the freak off smoke.
You know my baby Jamil is a mess, y'all. If y'all don't know,
did I say Jamal or Jamil?
Husband, yes. You know Jamil be cutting up. Y'all know Jamil be cutting up.
Come on, you are saying
Jamil, you are so nefarious. Okay, thank you for your insight to the topic, beloved. I thank you for your contribution to the channel. Okay, so thank everybody who participated and listened. I'll be reaching out to you guys again for another panel discussion about other things. Okay, so this isn't the last time; it was just the first of many. Okay, Gavin knows how I do. So anyway, with that all being said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Okay, remember, beloveds, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. Peace.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Yo, Nick, hit him with that flavor. All in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. That's See right. A bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece. This time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got